So, Squid Game Season 2 has finally hit Netflix, and I've been watching it same as everyone else has, and it's become one of the most popular shows on Netflix, and I've gotta say, I've not been enjoying it as much as I enjoyed Season 1 of Squid Game on Netflix. And I'm not saying that because Season 1 was better, I mean, it was, but that's not the reason I found myself not enjoying Season 2, because I think Season 2 is a victim of the hype generated by Season 1, and it's having an impact on the way we experience media now, especially with how we consume media and the whole system that Netflix saw popularized in the first place, and that is binge watching content. And I found myself in a position where everyone was talking about season 2 of Squid Game, no matter where you looked on the internet or anywhere, your peers, your co workers, your friends, your family. It was the hot topic to talk about. And if you hadn't seen it, you were essentially excluded from any conversation around it. One of the most common things I've seen online in regards to discussions about the show is how quickly people consumed the season, with a lot of people saying they finished it within a day, as if it's some kind of achievement. And that really sort of rubbed me the wrong way, because it puts pressure on everyone else to then finish the entire season as quickly as possible so they can join in these conversations without the risk of being spoiled. But also, just from my own experience in participating with conversations with people about the show, and I've noticed this over a long period of time as well with other shows that people binge watch versus shows that came out on a weekly basis, is that people tend to struggle when it comes to remembering certain details about what happened in what episode when they watch the whole thing in one sitting. Whereas when episodes were being released weekly, we had an entire episode to discuss and analyze for an entire week. And I find that discussions about shows that have every episode drop at once compared to shows that have episodes that are released weekly tend not to last very long, as people very quickly move on to whatever their next big show is going to be. And I've had an issue with this model for a long time now, but I think it's become more and more prevalent recently with big high profile shows like Squid Game, which have had a massive cultural impact, that it gets to a point where it's difficult to ignore now. And I have to say, I'm not a fan of this binge culture that we seem to have developed with the advent of streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus. Because I've just done a video where I did a year in review in regards to my favorite shows and movies and anime over the last year. And I distinctly remember my experience of watching a lot of the shows I did put on that list, because they were things I was excited for every single week. To the point where I had a routine where I would, be prepared for the time when the episode would drop, sit down and actually purposely watch it. Whereas when it came to shows that are just immediately available, I tended to either put them off, or if it's something that I might be worried about getting spoilers for, just have to prioritize it over everything else, to the point where watching it felt like a chore to me. Like I was doing homework just so I can keep up with my peers and my friends and families and all the conversations around the show. And at that point, the show just wasn't a fun experience anymore. It went from being a thing I would watch in my own leisure because I enjoyed it, to now being something I have to do in order to participate in society. And it's gone to the point where, I don't think it even matters anymore, because the people I was talking to don't even remember the characters' names. I'm pretty sure at least 2/3 of the people I talked to who said that they binge watched the whole thing in one sitting can't name the main character of Squid Game. And I'm someone who likes to discuss my shows and things I enjoy about it, and even theorize weekly when episodes were being dropped weekly. And I feel it kind of sucks the fun out of even talking about the show anymore, because the people you're talking to only like it superficially and aren't actually interested in the show itself. They are more interested in the social aspect, as in the discussion about the show that everyone is having, than they are actually about the show itself and what it's trying to tell you. I love the first season of Squid Game. It's very anti-capitalistic. It's very critical of predatory debt management systems. It's very critical of things like debt and the way it's used to control people. And it put a spotlight on the whole class divide between the rich and the poor, similar to movies like Parasite. And I love strong themes like that. But if you look online at things like the Beast Games and even Netflix doing their own version of Squid Game, The Challenge, you sort of realize that these people don't care at all about any of the nuanced meaning behind the actual story of Squid Game, and only care about competing in silly games for high-stake prizes. And the fact that these are all so soulless just goes to show that Squid Game has been cannibalized by the capitalistic system it's trying to critique, which is kind of depressing. And I kind of feel like I'm in the minority here when it comes to wanting shows to be released weekly, because I want to talk about it with friends as the episodes are coming out. In fact, the only thing I can see myself doing that with nowadays is usually anime that's still being released weekly, because When you look at discussions around current anime versus discussions about shows that get dropped immediately on Netflix, those discussions have a much longer lifespan. And they're just more fun to take part in because people are getting invested in this. Whereas with discussions about shows like Squid Game, people aren't invested in the characters of the story of that. They are more invested in the social aspect of talking about the popular thing with everyone else. And in a month's time, that's going to completely change. And if you invested yourself into that conversation and wanted to carry it on afterwards, you would probably end up being the only one to do so. Which is, I think, part of the reason why the anime community tends to be a lot more tightly knit. That's why you see things like cosplay meetups at conventions and fan events, because people are a lot more invested in them because there's a stronger community around it. And you just don't get that with shows on Netflix that drop every episode at once. In fact, I distinctly remember JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stone Ocean is an anime I quite like, and it's one I was excited for when it was announced. And what they did is they dropped the first half of the season, and then months later they dropped the second half as well. And in the period waiting between those two, the entire discussion around JoJo Stone Ocean was just completely dead in the water. And I remember absolutely hating that because they 100% could have just released the episodes on a weekly basis in that time period, and the community around it would have been a lot stronger. But unfortunately, interest only peaked when the episode dropped, and the second half of the season didn't even manage to get the first amount of interest back in with it. But unfortunately, interest only peaks when the episodes had dropped, and by the time the second batch of episodes came out, a lot of people have moved on to other things. And I can see this sort of thing being something that ends up killing entire franchises now, because Netflix have this ridiculous standard where if a show isn't immediately pulling in gangbusters, they'll cancel it after one season, which is something we used to criticize other networks for. Like, I remember things like Firefly being cancelled after one season, and people absolutely tearing into companies like Fox for doing that sort of thing. But now Netflix have gotten to a point where if it's not immediately consumable and bingeable and an instant success, they just cut it immediately. And the rate they churn out content, and I don't mean good content, I mean just content by the bucket load, has shifted over time to mean one thing to another. I remember when Netflix first launched its original productions, and we had shows like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards. Being a Netflix original production meant it was a quality product. But now it's just slop, for lack of a better term, because they churn out so much content. And most of it isn't even good anymore. Like, at first, they were putting out some amazing anime content like Castlevania and Cyberpunk Edge Runners and Arcane. But when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you realize they put out a lot of crap, and we're only pointing out the really good diamonds on that turd mountain. And they've had a lot more misses than they've had hits. To the point where if you look at other streaming services like Prime Video or Disney Plus, at the moment they are currently putting out better content than Netflix is currently doing. But I think it's just a matter of time until they sort of slide in the same direction. Because the reason this sort of thing happens is Netflix has captured its user base. It's got on the users' needs. And it knows that if it just keeps putting out content, people will keep subscribing. It doesn't have to be good content. They've gotten their user base. They know those subscriptions are going to stay, no matter how many restrictions they put on accounts. Even increasing their fee, like, over and over again. Like, they know people are going to stick with it. I mean, we've gotten to the point where you can buy the Blu-ray of shows on Netflix, and it will cost you less per year than the Netflix subscription. But because people prefer convenience, they are willing to pay the monthly fee for that. Even when shows are constantly being taken off streaming services or cycling around, to the point where every single time I want to watch something, I have to Google which service it's on first, because it's on a different one every other month. And I honestly find myself, like, struggling to look forward to anything Netflix puts out. Things like Stranger Things. I'm not looking forward to that coming out anymore, because I'm not going to watch it because I enjoy it. I'm going to have to watch all of it in one go, because I know if I don't, I'll be spoiled on the series, and I won't be able to discuss it with anyone until I've finished it. And I know it's what everyone's going to want to talk about when it drops, which frustrates me to no end. I want to watch a show and enjoy it, but unfortunately, because of this binge culture we have, I now essentially have to treat it like a job or like I'm doing homework just to keep up with my peers in social interactions. Kind of sucks the fun out of enjoying shows in the first place. But that's just me ranting about Squid Game and just how much of a chore it feels like now to watch these shows. I enjoy it, don't get me wrong. Squid Game Season 2, solid season. I still think the first season is better because it works better as a standalone story. I kind of wish it was its own thing. I'm glad they got rid of his silly, stupid red hair from the end of the first season. That was my biggest worry when it came to Season 2, is that they'll keep him with that stupid dyed hair. I'm glad they got rid of that immediately. But no, great season, great characters. I just hate the culture we've gotten around binge watching now, because I think it is definitely impacting the discussion and just like sense of community around enjoying media like this. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if you feel the same way as me. If you prefer to binge watch shows, hell, let me know if you enjoy the discussion around the show more than the actual show itself. I'm pretty sure there are definitely people out there who prefer the social aspect when it came to this sort of thing. I'm pretty sure we're seeing the same sort of thing when it comes to book talk, because people are discussing books like Avatar, Fourth Wing, and whatever is currently trending, to the point where people aren't actually reading the books, they're reading Wikipedia summaries and then joining in discussions, because they don't want to sit down and read a big, thick novel. They just want to join this community, which I don't really have anything against, to be honest. If people prefer that, that's fine. And I think that's definitely a gap in the market that can probably be addressed even better. And by giving people things to talk about, instead of having to make them sort of Frankenstein a topic to have these sort of communities and discussions around. Maybe that's a separate discussion we could be having. But there are people out there who do want that social communal aspect around a niche interest or hobby or a show or a book or a movie, without the work of having to consume the works. But anyway, I better wrap this video up before I start ranting about something else completely, because I am that kind of person who would absolutely do that. Yeah, let me know in the comments below, what are you watching? If you want to see what I've been watching, I have a separate video where I reviewed all the best things I had seen this year. I gave you my top 3 movies, anime, video games, and TV shows. I'd recommend checking that one out. There are some underrated gems you really do need to check out that I feel like I'm the only person who's actually seen. And I do want to see those shows get you more love. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Ring that bell, all that good stuff. I also stream on this channel if you want to chat with me directly about things, or just log a complaint with me directly. Feel free to hit me up whenever I'm streaming. I'm playing a lot of Marvel Rivals lately. I've also been streaming Alan Wake 2. Come by and say hi whenever I'm live. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Sayonara.